For our next session, I'm so pleased to host a fireside chat with Amnah Ajmal, Executive Vice President at Mastercard, to explore the future of fintech. With a career spanning 12 countries and leadership roles across continents, Amnah has been instrumental in transforming business by redefining consumer experiences and driving innovation in financial services. Recognized as one of the top 100 women in fintech globally and ranked among the top 25 women leaders in financial technology in the US, Amnah will share her insights on the latest trends in fintech, the importance of collaboration between fintechs and traditional financial players, and how inclusion is fueling industry growth. Please join me in welcoming Amnah. It's wonderful to be joined by a female leader in tech on stage today. And Amnah, I know that partnerships are so important to you at Mastercard. Tell us about how important they really are in terms of ensuring that a fintech is successful.
Thank you very much. So I think the two factors that play a very critical role in the success of any fintech. One is the scale, and second, I would say, is the break-even or the profitability point, right? You may achieve the scale, which means you could have millions and millions of customers, you could be in many, many markets, but you still are not at a break-even or a profitability point, right? So if you take those two factors into account as your end objective, if you're a fintech, you need to reach scale and you need to achieve a break-even or a path to profitability. The ecosystem, the way it's working now, especially I would say in the last 3-4 years, is very different than the ecosystem that was maybe as recent as 7 years back, right? Because the roles are very properly defined and the regulators are very particular about granting licenses. Innovation was not a forte that anyone could enter into. It's not that I think of a problem and I would say, okay, let's solve it, let's open a company, right? So the possibilities of collaboration were really less. A bank was a bank, an acquirer was an acquirer, a payment service provider was a payment service provider. If I'm issuing cards, then my issuing business is a different, separate entity, right? Now it's very hard to figure out. You would see acquirers getting into issuing, you will see loyalty providers getting into issuance, you will see retailers actually getting into acquiring payment service business. So I almost say it's like this intertwined ecosystem, right? And now you as a fintech make entry into this ecosystem. So you can't even draw this picture if you just visualize it, right? So you are a player collaborating already with like 20, 30 other players. As opposed to 7 years back, you enter, you're collaborating with 3, 4 players in the ecosystem because the roles are well defined. So that completely changes the way you have to operate. You really have to understand the problem you're solving for, and you're only good at solving that problem. For the rest, you have to be a plug and a play. So if I'm solving a problem for, let's say, collections of telco customers, right? Then can I expand this to buy now, pay later players? Of course I can, because I'm actually a fintech which is helping collect the debts, right? Can I expand it to suppliers to collect supplier payments? Yes, but I have to remain within my domain, which means I'll have to collaborate with telcos, with suppliers, with B2B payment companies. So see, this intersection means I really have to figure out my path to scale, my path to profitability, and then which players are in the middle with whom I would collaborate. Without it, you can't achieve break-even point or scale.
And we know that Mastercard has collaborated successfully with many other partners. Tell us about some of these really essential partnerships and the most successful ones, if you could give us a couple of examples.
Sure. So Amazon is a great one. When you think of Amazon as a consumer, you think about I'm buying goods. All of us over here are users of Amazon. But Amazon is also a payment service provider. right? So Mastercard's payment gateway has a partnership with Amazon, and we help them to streamline and process the payments, which is a great partnership because if you look at Amazon, their obsession with customer experience and the fact that a payment can never ever fail, it's it's that joint mission which brings these two companies together, because we process billions and trillions of transactions across the world, and it's the same mission that your promise to the customer is that the payment will always go through. But that's on payment innovation. If I take a different angle, which is around financial inclusion, which is a big mission for Mastercard, then I think the partnership of telcos is extremely important, whether it's our partnership with E&D over here or with MTN, Airtel, and Orange in Africa. And I love these partnerships because if you look at the 3-4 telcos together, they have access to 800 million consumers. That's massive. That's huge, right? So Mastercard's partnership together gives them the access to consumers plus access to the SMEs. But a very important part of this partnership is that it plays differently in a mature market like UAE versus not so developed markets in Africa. So over here, we are trying to serve the pyramid like the gig workers, customers who are planning to send money home by having one EN app where our products around remittances and virtual card are making it easier for these immigrant workers to send money back home. But in Africa, you're talking about solving a problem for these telcos where I earn my daily wage in cash, I pay my daily electricity bill, How do I keep this cash safe, right? So they're already using the mobile money, but it's a closed loop economy. Mastercard's virtual products make them open loop, which means all of a sudden they can actually trade, they can expand their businesses because the whole world where Mastercard is accepted opens up to them. So very different examples of like a developed market versus emerging markets, but it's the scale and the innovation and the distribution power that the telcos have, combined with Mastercard's products and expertise, which drives financial inclusion and as well as innovation.
Tell us a little bit more about the different types of customer-centric innovations that you're employing to make your services more accessible and more inclusive. If you could elaborate a little bit on that.
So I would talk more from a consumer standpoint, because I think when you work in a tech company, there are like so many jargons and tech product names that you can be lost in this world of technology, right? Safety and security is top of mind. So a lot of things happen at the back end which consumers are not aware of. But I would say now at least the awareness is higher. Why would you use your biometrics, for example, as opposed to entering a card number? If you remember a few years back, it was very common to take the card from your wallet, enter it on 20 different websites. And even if the website would ask you, would you want to save it, people will click yes, right? It's a very different kind of awareness now. So what we have invested is a lot of AI-based risk scoring for transactions at the back end to make sure that as consumers are putting their card on file, as they're using biometric checkouts, those transactions are safe. And that's where AI and scoring, and because we see the data of so many transactions, plays a very critical role. So I think that's customer centricity, but in a way that a lot of us would take it for granted.
Tell us a little bit more about how you're using AI to provide personalized financial products and services that are really tailored to individual needs and preferences.
A lot of our products with the retailers, and we recently announced our partnership with Alshaya, and it's a multiple market partnership, and we'll be going live very soon in one of the markets. In fact, the launch is happening today. Our data,
do you care to elaborate on that?
So when we partner with a brand like Alshaya, like they have these amazing, incredible brands in Saudi, in Kuwait, in UAE, right? Multiple markets. They have a lot of data because of their loyalty brand Aura. But all this data is a closed loop data. So let's say they have my data because I'm an Aura member. But now if I get a payment product, from Mastercard's standpoint, I have a lot of data on the same individual. All of this is anonymized, right? Power my data together with Alshaya's data I know Amna actually takes a caramel macchiato from Starbucks in Mall of Emirates, right? Now that is so powerful because you know what other brands of Al-Shaya exist in Mall of Emirates, and you also know that actually I am in Mall of Emirates because my Aura app is now on. It has a geolocation ring fence capability, and actually I can get personalized real-time offers. So it's a great example of how two companies' data, capabilities, and two great brands come together to give a very personalized experience to the end consumer.
And what strategies do you think that fintech leaders should be employing in 2025 and in the years ahead?
Well, first I would say, looking at the room, hire more women, for God's sake.
I absolutely agree. We represent less than 1% of the population in this room.
Yes, even outside the room, I noticed. I would say a couple of things. Also, looking at M&A in the region, a lot of fintechs have expansion plans, but in our region, unlike Europe, where EU has a similar set of regulations, or if I take a market like Brazil or Australia, which is massive and huge, and if you prove your product over there, you eventually get scale. UAE is a great market for you as a fintech to pilot your product, but it's not going to give you the scale. So you'll have to enter Saudi. Now, if you enter Saudi, and in many of the projections, you assume that in 1 year you'll enter in UAE, Saudi, that ain't ever going to happen. The regulations are different. The customers are different. Your product may have to be tweaked completely differently, catering to the local cultural nuances. Your pricing may have to be completely different. Your competitive landscape will be different. So I think it's a lot of knowledge about the regulatory landscape that fintechs need to have more so today because it's becoming extremely competitive. Second, prioritizing the markets. Third, I would say it would be a war for talent because you see a lot of fintechs who have the great idea. Well, first of all, no, let me rephrase. If you're solving a problem that you only think is your problem and your friend thinks a problem, that would never ever scale because for most people it's not a problem, right? But let's say you genuinely spotted a problem which actually is a problem for the masses. Then the second step to it is to really get talent which complements the capabilities that you as a founder or as a fintech team lacks. So for example, you're entering into financial services. Who has the understanding of governance, of regulations, of compliance, of entry into multiple markets? What does it take to enter into a market like Saudi, which offers you scale, but it's very complex? So getting that kind of talent is extremely important. You cannot export a talent from completely different market, put them in this market and assign them, which I do see happening a lot, that, oh, we would enter Saudi. No, you can't do that. Africa is a continent, it has multiple markets. It gives you a lot of scale if you enter into Nigeria, but it's probably one of the hardest markets to crack, right? It's also a very tough market to attract talent and retain talent. So regulatory, governance, compliance, phasing out your entry into markets, and the last, I would say, how you acquire talent. It's easier for me sitting here at Mastercard how to acquire talent, right? There's a brand, there's a company, there's very attractive financial incentives. But when you're a small fintech company, how would you attract talent? How would you make sure that talent is relevant in that market? How would you retain them? It's hard.
Absolutely, and I just want to go back to what you said earlier about innovation and the regulatory environment and how it's become so much more complex. How do you ensure that you continue to innovate while abiding by these very strict regulations and how to scale, in regulatory environments that are somewhat unfamiliar in countries, for example, like Saudi Arabia or in some in the African continent?
So I think you need to have local talent. That's absolutely critical. Like if you're headquartered outside this region and you have a model of coming in, going out, that ain't gonna work. Local access to local talent, access to local public sector is extremely, extremely critical. Partnerships are critical. I also think that regulators and regulations are an opportunity because it could be that you have not thought through, and right or wrong, but crypto is a great example, right? That a lot of things that the industry players would not have thought of, the regulator had to think of them ahead because of something that happened in some other part of the world, right? So I would say access to local talent would be absolutely critical. Regulators are putting in regulations to make sure that as long as you're touching in anywhere in your business someone's money, it's extremely important, right? It's the hard-earned money. So you have to make sure, I believe regulators are doing the right thing by the economy and by protecting people's interest, people's money. What you have to make sure is that you understand the regulations, you're well prepared for it, you have the local talent, and how to use the regulations as an opportunity to innovate, as opposed to looking at the regulation and say, oh my God, this is a showstopper. And time your business. When someone says that, oh, in 2 years, I will enter in these 10 markets, and I look at the list of 10 markets, it's impossible. You can't.
But I'm sure you don't tell them that, do you?
I tell them in a more politically correct way.
Okay, speaking of politically correct, we did mention the lack of women in this room and at this conference in general. How do you think that we can increase female representation in fintech leadership roles?
Gosh, I think it's a topic at every conversation, every room, every event, every meeting room. And the new year has started, so I'm trying to be as optimistic as I can be. I would say there's a lot that still needs to be done. 3-4 things that I think we should really double down on, and I'm really privileged to be in UAE, a country which is so safe and which is doing so much to advance this agenda. First of all, in today's world with social media, everyone has a voice. Awareness plays a very important role. So use that social media platform, no matter what you do, whether you're a man or a woman, to highlight and create awareness about the issue. That's very, very important. Many things are changing today, not necessarily because people woke up with this inherent desire in them and this passion in them to change it, but it's because the talk is happening so much around them that they feel that, yes, we have to do something about it, right? So raise your voice. Each one of us has it. Second, I would say there's a lot of work that needs to be done to bring the women back into the workforce who left the workforce for a while to raise their family. I think this is a massive, huge gap because not only it has impacted their confidence, which drops significantly because if you were especially in financial services or technology kind of a field, it has moved on so much that you feel you're not equipped with the right knowledge now to come back to the workforce. But more importantly, there's not a lot happening from the corporation sides also to make them more comfortable. Like AI is not something that are all the new cloud computing and technologies. Like I studied COBOL and Pascal, which became useless 4 years after I graduated, right? So you can upskill. You can teach these technologies, but you have to first give the confidence to the women to come back into the workforce. Third would be internal promotions. For so many roles, you will see that an external talent would be brought in based on a 1-hour interview. But if you have an internal female talent, it's very important, even if your 100% isn't there, to promote her. And lastly, I would say that if you have a woman around you, it doesn't matter. If you have a little girl around you, it could be your niece, your daughter, right? You have to make sure that you're constantly uplifting them. Women need it so much more than men. And I could be a senior-most person in the company. I could be the junior-most person in the company. It's very important that I take this responsibility to uplift others around me. And it could be a very small thing. Like at times, I see women who would be in a meeting and they won't say a word and they would step out. And, while just leaving at the door, I would say, oh, you're so smart. You could have said so much in the meeting. You lost an opportunity because no one even heard your voice.
That's wonderful. So use your social media to promote the cause. Encourage the women who surround you. Tell women that their knowledge is not obsolete if they're re-entering the workforce and that they can upskill. And the fourth one, Amnah.
You started with
You mentioned it
the
second.
First
one. You mentioned it second.
Promotions.
Promotions.
And raise your hand. I tell this to women all the time.
Yeah.
At times they would say, oh no, but I think they've already thought about that person for this role, so I should not apply. I said, that's not your problem.
Yes.
what is in your hand? What is in your hand that you raise your hand and you say A, B, C, D are the job requirements. I do meet A, B, and C. I'm not there with D yet, but here's my past track record, which shows the agility, and I'll get to that. So I think I'm the best qualified for that job. And after that, negotiate the right salary. Research has proven that women do not negotiate their salary. So many women, when I tell them, so we are at the fifth point to it, when I tell them that ask for more money, they're like, oh, but that's so odd. How would I come across? No, you're doing a job. Ask for the money, but I think they may feel that I'm too greedy. No, when men ask for salary, we say they're ambitious. They know their worth. When women ask for more salary, oh my God, they're greedy. No, ask for the money that you want.
We need to have a separate conversation for this conversation, Amnah. Next time we'll talk about women in the workforce. Just very quickly, because we're short on time, I would like to know how you envision the evolution of fintech services in the decade ahead. Look into your crystal ball for us, if you would.
So I'm not a magician, but I would say that there would be a lot of acquisition and mergers in some industries, like buy now, pay later, crypto houses, the industries which are coming up. You would see consolidation and mergers, because I don't think so many players can exist. I would say that mostly the digital financial services, you will keep on seeing more digital wallets coming up from non-traditional financial institutions like we see today, Kareem, Uber, eAnd. So you will see a lot of emergence of digital wallets, and I think people will get more and more comfortable with it. You would see that banking and payments will become more and more invisible, like a taxi ride.
Well, look forward to hearing from you in the years ahead and monitoring all of these developments. Amnah Ajmal, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Thank you.